My name is Russ with CapEx Sales, and super excited to talk about something that I am passionate about and something that I've had experience in for the last 26 years of my career. Back in 1994, I graduated from college, and man, I can't believe it's that many years ago. 26 years. I was just talking with someone the other day. And so 26 years ago, my first job out of college was as a manufacturing engineer at Cummins Engine Company in Columbus, Indiana. And I was 2 weeks into the job, 21, 22 years old. And they came to me and said, "Hey, Russ, we need to buy this wash system for the line that you are responsible for. We have a budget." And they sent me on my way. The budget was $135,000. Now, I didn't even know what $135,000 would possibly look like, but I felt like it was a heck of a lot of money, and I was super excited to spend it. And but what I realized quickly is in college, they don't teach you how to manage capital projects. And if you watched this series that we did on managing capital projects, we talk through that process and how you can really build your skills as a capital project manager and some of the key aspects and things to keep an eye on, and kind of the blocking and tackling, as well as the big picture that you need to consider when you are managing capital projects. And so a prelude to that was I wrote an article and actually wrote a little book that's called The 6 Capital Project Budget Busters, or actually the book's called Capital Disaster, and kind of talks through these 6 areas, and it gives some examples of my experience and shares that with you in the book to kind of give you some perspective and real world experience. So today we're going to talk through these challenges here on IndustryCast. If I can get my computer to work here. All right, next screen. There we go. All right. So again, a reminder, what we do at CapEx Sales, we build relationships that work. Our mission is to help our customers improve and grow in every way, every day. So we want to share useful content, things that are meaningful, impactful, that will help our customers do their job, perform their jobs more efficiently, and then ideally increase their career and grow themselves in their business. That's our mission. That's why we want to share this kind of content that hopefully is helpful in allowing some insights as to how they can accelerate their career. We also represent several companies. ATC Automation out of Cookeville, Tennessee. I always say 85% of our business is with repeat customers. That says a lot for a capital equipment company, because many companies out there build automation, but not many of them do every year over year 85% of their business with the same customers. So that means that only 15% of our business each year is with new customers. So that says a lot. There are a lot of one and done companies out there, but ATC, in my experience in the 20 plus years that I've been working with them, they always follow through and do what they need to do to satisfy the customer needs. So Cincinnati Test Systems, when I started working with these guys, I was an engineer at Cummins Engine Company. This is how I got into selling capital equipment in the first place. Cincinnati Test Systems then was a small company that mainly sold instruments, built a couple machines here and there. That was back in 1994, as I mentioned, 94, 95, when I started working with them. They are now the largest leak test company in the world. So very proud of their growth, and proud to have been a small part of helping them to grow their footprint in the territories that I've been involved with, but amazing company nonetheless. Duquesne Plastic Joining Solutions, they're up in St. Charles, Illinois, but really they've got a global footprint. They do hot plate welding, vibration welding, ultrasonic welding, all things plastic joining. And one of their machines that they have a new hot plate weld. I call it a hot plate welder, but this product is actually capable of doing hot plate welding, hot gas welding, as well as infrared welding. So just changing out the tooling allows you to use one machine for 3 different technologies. So really helpful if you are changing from product to product and you need to change technologies along the way. So you're able to reuse the capital equipment for that main. And then Symmetric is a division of Cincinnati Test Systems, but I break them out because they are in the high-speed in-process test and data management. So they are really Industry 4.0 or Industry 4.0 component of the TASI companies. And then Keller Technologies out of Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is where I am today. They have a comprehensive line of industrial air filtration, wet and dry air filtration for industry. Okay, all right, let's jump right into this. The challenge. So the challenge is hitting the budget. Hitting the budget is rare in capital projects, at least in my experience. I've been involved in over 500 projects throughout my 20 plus year career. And it's rare that we ever meet the budget. And these are the top 6 reasons that I've identified, at least in my experience, that these projects budgets are not met. And as you know, the budget is critical. So you justify, your management justified signing the dotted line to say, yes, we believe that the payback for this equipment, for this capital investment is going to be and meet our company's criteria. So they sign off on the dotted line to allow us to buy the equipment as engineers, and then we buy the equipment. If we don't meet the financial return, it's going to impact the company's profitability. And that's a big deal. It's a big deal for us as employees, and it's a big deal for your management as they are obviously working to achieve profitability for the business, which is particularly challenging in the automotive manufacturing world, which is 65% of the business that we're involved with. So hitting the budget is a rare and sometimes difficult to see situation. So, all right, the reasons are almost always the same and avoidable for all companies. Investing in capital equipment, meeting the budget targets is critical, as I just mentioned, for your management team as well as for the business as a whole and for your employment long term, right? If you're not able to manage a project and manage it profitably and successfully, then you're probably not going to be asked to manage many projects. So the project manager has to have an understanding of how to keep the project on track and within budget. So on track as in timing wise, because that impacts the profitability and the effectiveness of your equipment. And also from a budget perspective, that can really throw you off as far as your return on investment when you miss the budget. So here's budget buster number one. Number one, I'm telling you, I've seen this time and again and time and again and time and again and time and again. And I don't just say this because I represent companies that aren't necessarily the cheapest companies out there. I speak from experience. Poor vendor selection is the number one problem, the number one issue that I see customers have time and time again. And the reason is most often because they are buying based on price or fastest delivery. And those are two important things, price and delivery, very important. But if you are teaming up with a company that doesn't have the necessary experience, doesn't have the bandwidth, doesn't have the capacity, same as bandwidth, so they don't have the knowledge to build the product that you're looking to build, but they're really good at sales. Maybe they convince you that they have that capability, they have that capacity, that it'll be no problem. You convince yourself, oh, they're right down the road. I've seen this happen. I had a customer in Mexico. They chose a vendor that happened to be in the same town that they were in, and their feeling was that, hey, we'll just be able to go manage them. And so in their, that turned out to be, again, a capital disaster, right? That it was a complete and utter failure, didn't get delivered as a product for Ford. The equipment didn't get delivered on time. When it did, it didn't produce quality parts. And actually the company came back to us. And so we built we built one new line and then used components from the other to build the second line that they needed. So that was a situation where the customer felt that they could manage the vendor that they were going to select. But the reality is that even though you're paying the money to the vendor has no accountability to you as it relates to managing their resources. So especially if they don't have competent people to execute the project. So very common problem that I see that I want to encourage you to keep an eye on and make sure that you've got the stakeholders in the room and that you clearly define the ideal partner for your application. So here's how you avoid that, right? So get clear on who you're going to choose. What is the ideal partner for the application? Not just for your company, but for the application. There are some companies that have specific experience and lots of experience assembling the projects or the products that you're looking to assemble. As an example, if you have like an O2 sensor, or you're going to make some type of sensor, well, there are lots of companies out there that have experience manufacturing sensor equipment. There are a number of companies out there that have experience making throttle bodies, as an example. So you would want to go to someone ideally that has experience assembling the products that it is that you're going to be manufacturing. Then you want to create a very detailed decision matrix, and with the criteria that you just outlined, and identifying who the ideal partner is and what you want in the equipment, and then have some type of weighting system that's not going to give all weight. It's not going to give price or delivery the say in how you make that determination. So the quality of equipment that you end up delivering is going to be dependent on the quality of vendor, and the relationship you have with that vendor is critical as well. So develop a detailed specification for every project. Really important, because if you don't define it, you might end up with something that you really don't want. Budget buster number 2 is timing. So a lack of time to properly execute the project. This is most common, right? So Ford, you've got a new program with Ford, and the SOP is August of 2020, and they have not frozen the design. So you're continuing to kick the can down the road. Maybe your management only meets once a month, and you need board signature for this. And COVID-19 hits, and so they're not approving it. They're not approving it. And they're not approving it because even though it has to happen, there's nothing that is indicating that your customer Ford is going to delay the start of the project. So, but your management delays. That's the most common problem that I see is management sign off on the financials causes a delay in your ability to start the project. So, so limited due diligence in selecting a vendor. You don't have much time, so you got to go. So you choose the first person that walks through the door that has a quote and has a price and appears to have the ability to build the equipment. So and these vendors oftentimes will commit to unrealistic delivery expectations to get your business. I've seen that many times. So we need to build this $5 million piece of equipment, and we have to do it in 16 weeks. Well, it's brand new. There's nothing designed on it. There's nothing that we're going to use or reuse for the equipment. 16 weeks is unreasonable for a $5 million piece of equipment, unless you're building something that's already been built. So, especially with custom equipment. So be real, get real, think smartly about this. Like, is this really possible? You got to ask yourself that question, not just go with what the vendor is saying, because at the end of the day, many vendors will tell you whatever you want to hear so that they can get your business. Because at the end of the day, when you are halfway through the project, it's not like you're going to stop. You're stuck at that point. So get really clear on making those vendor selections. Poor design of equipment. So oftentimes it's just get it done. We've got to have it, whatever. So you got to hit that unrealistic timeline. So you end up with equipment that is not designed ideally for your application. So in this case too, you often have limited debug time when you don't have much time, right? So debugging of the equipment is critical, absolutely critical to making sure that you have optimum uptime when it hits your floor. Many companies, I've seen it hundreds of times, it seems, maybe not that many, but it seems like hundreds of times where they're ship the equipment. And they want to ship equipment that hasn't been properly debugged, nor have we properly run the equipment off. And I know sometimes it is required because Ford says you got to have it on your floor, and they make unrealistic demands because that's what customers do sometimes. And so you have to deliver it. But the ideal situation is always to leave the equipment on the floor, get it properly debugged by the vendor, and then ship it to your facility so that when it lands there, it is ready to go. It's ready to run production. Obviously, it won't be without bugs, but still, it'll be much better than having your supplier on site for the next 3 months to get it running properly, because it's going to cost you a lot of money, because your vendor is not going to do that for free, because it's likely not their fault that the equipment had to be shipped early. So indecision on budget approval, I mentioned that is really the number one problem that I see with companies, is their management is not decisive in allowing their company to move forward, their engineers to move forward, or the buyer is on a power trip and is delaying the decision because they're holding out for terms that they prefer. And so as a result, that just stacks up on top and you end up with a train wreck. Budget buster number three, design changes. So you're in the middle of building this equipment, you've got it designed, you've got approval, and then all of a sudden product engineering says, whoop, turns out the package that we've got isn't going to we can't install this on the engine because of this reason. So that results in a design change. Another problem that I've seen is the drainage of the oil. So the oil doesn't have enough drainage to get down into the engine like it should. So we had to, or the customer had to reconfigure the drain passages on the product. So these design changes take time, obviously, and what happens is that delays the project, because we're going to have to design around those areas. It causes inefficiencies. So one way to prevent that is to make sure that your design engineer is in the discussions and make sure that they understand the need to get these designs firmed up early. You got to make sure that you are, as a manufacturing engineer, as a project engineer, understanding and on top of these changes that are being made, or these potential changes that are going to affect the project. Now, before the project gets kicked off, these are not a big deal, but after the project, most often they're not a big deal, but after the project gets kicked off, it is a big deal to make changes, because you got to redesign things, and it will impact the timing on your project and your budget, because things have to be redesigned. Maybe things have to be remanufactured, especially tooling for pallets, things like that. It's a big deal. So work with a design engineer to understand what areas of the product are likely to be changed, and then talk with your vendor. Always be keeping your vendor up to speed with what's going on, so that they are aware of potentially avoiding an area and kind of designing around a situation that could potentially cause a problem for them in the future. Also, keep your management informed. They need to understand what design engineering is doing, because the reality of the situation is, if it's late and if it's over budget, you as a project manager are the one that's going to get thrown under the bus. So it's important that you keep your management up to speed, everyone in your organization that has a stake in this project. Project engineer. Budget buster number four, lack of parts. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many times that this has been a problem. And it's understandably so, right? Because prototype parts and pre-production parts are very expensive. So companies have a tendency to not want to purchase them, to not want to make that investment. But I'm telling you, it's either pay me now or pay me later. Every time, pay me now or pay me later, because whenever a customer does not have proper debug parts, the equipment hits their floor, and inevitably it is not up to speed. It is not as efficient as it could have been. And suppliers have to stay there and try to work on the equipment as they're trying to run production. It's a disaster. It's a real problem. So it is important that in the beginning, when you're creating the budget, when you're involved in this project, the planning phase, make sure that your purchasing people and everyone in your organization understands the importance of purchasing parts. Yes, it's going to cost $250,000. Maybe it's going to cost $500,000 to purchase the parts. Whatever the cost, I guarantee you it's going to save you money in the long run, as opposed to fighting all of the problems that occur with not properly debugging the equipment on the vendor's floor. I promise you, that $500,000, you're going to eat that up in a year of inefficiencies, of product quality problems, of issues with your customer getting out the door. So it's important that you make that investment, that you encourage your management, your team to make that investment. So oftentimes, again, there's no budget. The timing has caused all suppliers to be parallel path. That's a real problem, right? Because management didn't approve the capital for this new program until the absolute last minute. Therefore, you're just kicking off the die cast molds. That's a problem, right? It's because the die cast company is going to be making those at the same time that you're building the assembly equipment, as an example, or the leak test equipment, or whatever equipment it is that you're building. Your machining centers, you're going to have parts for your tombstones. I mean, having parts to debug is critical for the application, and an investment well made. Number 5, inadequate budget. Man, this is a common problem. So I want to encourage you to get involved in the quoting process, because this is how you can ensure that someone, maybe a project manager or a salesperson, throws a number into a quote for your customer that is half of the number that it needs to be. Well, if you have justified the equipment with your customer, or if your salesperson has, if they say, yeah, we can do it for $5, and then all of a sudden you get that budget and you're like, no, the equipment alone is going to cost $2 a part or $3 a part. Well, that's going to be a problem. So it's important that you get involved in that quoting process early. Some companies already have a program for that, but if not, I encourage you to do that. Create a template with general pricing so that you can quickly provide budgets whenever your sales team engages you, right? That's a common problem. Your sales team says, hey, facilities team, I need a quote. What do you think it's going to cost to produce this part? We need, $200,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. And it takes you weeks to get that quote. Well, your customer's already moved on. You've got to respond quickly. So if you've been involved with these processes for a long time, you can create a spreadsheet. You can say, when I did the CD6R program, that equipment cost X. Here's the number of parts that it was producing, and here's some general component information, and here's the efficiency, blah, blah, blah. So it's cycle time. So you can lay all that out on a spreadsheet so that if someone calls and says, hey, I've got program XYZ, I've got this many units a year, here's the number of components in the equipment, here's the general, or it's similar to the CD6R, you can look it up and say, okay, yeah, the equipment that we purchased back then was $1 million. We got to figure inflation because that was a few years ago. So let's say it's going to be 1.25 million. And then that's what you use for the budget. That's how you prevent from getting shish kebab, because if you don't have the proper budget, you end up using sticks and cardboard to try to build your components on, and inevitably efficiency suffers, quality suffers, profitability suffers, and everybody is generally miserable because they've got to work on the equipment all the time because it's woefully inadequate for the product that it's trying to produce. So that is really key. It's important that, again, that the stakeholders know up front that funding that has been allocated, and I'm going to tell you, I don't say this very often, but if you're an engineer and you have been asked to get involved with a project and you know that the budget is woefully under what it needs to be, I encourage you to run, because you're going to end up with a situation where you've got to buy equipment that is less than satisfactory for your project, and your name is going to be on it. Everyone always forgets the circumstances in which the equipment has to be purchased, but they always remember who purchased the equipment. So as far as rising internal to an organization, your reputation, I'd really think about, or push back on folks and say, look, I know this is inadequate. There is not enough money to do this, and encourage them to adjust the budget accordingly. Budget buster number 6, inexperienced and untrained project managers. So capital project management is often developed through experience and tribal teachings. I know that's how I learned. I mean, that first project I did with that wash system, it was over budget because I had screwed up some things, and it was not properly run off. When it was shipped to our facility, I had not cleared out the area in which the machine was going to be installed. So they had to store it on our dock. And so the fork trucks had to drive around it in order to put our fuel systems into the back of the trailer. So as you can imagine, I was not, they didn't think very highly of me at that time as we were working through that problem. You know, the new guy screwed it up. So creativity is very important for innovation and is often lacking in the manufacturing world. So when we need to be creative, obviously creative for pricing, maybe creative for utilizing existing equipment, creative in identifying new ways to put things together. We don't want to reinvent the wheel though, right? If you've got a process and it's working, then that's where you start. That's the starting point, not reinventing the wheel. And oftentimes I see engineers look to reinvent the wheel, and build it upside down, when for the last 100 years you've been building it right side up. So that's some of the craziness that you got to work through. So inexperienced person, like me at $135,000, that's like giving $10,000 to a teenager and expecting them to do the right thing. Now, there's no guarantee that they won't do the right thing, but the odds are stacked against us, right? So it's important that we have that experience, that we align people with mentors to help them work through that. So and if you're interested, I developed a class that I mentioned. We've gone through it very quickly in these series that we're doing, but it's called Capital Project Mastery. It is a training course to help engineers to understand the fundamentals of managing capital projects. And like I said, 24 plus years of experience in working with capital projects. So a lot to share as it relates to that. And I enjoy teaching, coaching, and helping people grow in their careers. So you can visit certifiedcpm.com for more on that. All right. Poor vendor selection, big issue. Make sure that you've got a matrix, that you have talked internally about what qualities you want in a vendor. Get very clear on that. Do you need them to be close by? Do you care where they are? Do you need them to have experience manufacturing equipment for your specific product? What are the specifics for that vendor? Get very clear on that. Timing. It is important that your management sign that capital budget approval as quickly as possible. It's important that you move forward with your vendor with very clear expectations, a very clear project timeline, as well as a project specification. Understand design changes, know the risks going into the project, and make sure that everyone is up to speed, from your vendor to your management. Everyone must know what's going on with the design, lack of parts. So try to get involved early so that you've got the budget, the monies to purchase the parts that you need to properly debug and run off your equipment. It is critical to your project success long term, right? So it's again, pay me now or pay me later. If you don't make the investment, it's going to cost you in the long run, not the short run. Inadequate budget. This is very common when engineers don't get involved in that budget making process, but make it easy. As an engineer, you got to make it easy for your people to come to you and say, hey, George, I need a price. This is the specifics on the project, and you not take weeks and months to come up with that price. You've got to have a reference sheet, and you come up with it quickly to help them out. Inexperienced and untrained project managers, nothing we can do about that other than maybe take this capital project mastery class to kind of get up to speed, but experience is the key. And using the tools like we have in capital project mastery can also help to ensure that you're communicating properly, you're properly setting expectations, you're clearly articulating what it is that needs to happen in order for the project to be successful. That wraps it up. Hey, Chris, were there any questions?
None at this time, Russ. Great information. Lots of good stuff. We appreciate it.
All right. Now, Chris Mullins, he has been involved in capital project management for many, many years as well, both as a supplier and then, of course, on the sales side. So Mike Dorsey, same thing, been involved with capital equipment for many, many years. So feel free to reach out to them as well if you have more questions. Again, they've got the books that they can give to you. If you're interested in the book, I'm happy to mail it out to you. Just shoot us your address and we can make that happen. Super excited about next week. My friend Chuck Haggard from Cincinnati Test Systems is joining me on September 30th. We're going to talk electric vehicles and powertrain, specifically testing of electric vehicles. Just kind of here's what's going on. Here are some of the latest programs, projects, stuff to be thinking about, and specifically, again, the testing aspect, Industry 4.0, and where this EV world is going. And then October 7th, we're going to talk about the common mistakes that we make in capital projects, in managing capital projects. So we've talked about what the budget busters are, the real problems that cause issues there. And then we're going to talk about when we are actually managing a capital project, the most common mistakes that we've seen and discovered over the course of the years. Welcome any feedback, any topic that you want to cover in manufacturing, specifically, especially capital equipment. We want to go deeper on Industry 4.0. We want to talk about anything related to manufacturing. Let us know, and we are happy to cover that topic. We really, again, want to educate and help our customers to grow themselves in their career. That is our mission. And then can't thank you enough. Always want to express to our customers, we are grateful. We are grateful that we have the opportunity to do what we do thanks to you and in your business. So we're super appreciative. If you're in South Carolina, Mike Dorsey's your person. Chris Mullins over in Eastern North Carolina and Virginia. And then yours truly is focused on Western North Carolina, and then some select accounts in the upstate South Carolina area. So again, appreciate each and every one of you. Hope you have an amazing day, and look forward to seeing you back here next week with IndustryCast for CapEx. Cheers.